You think your problem is your life. Your job, your money, your relationships, your lack of time, your stress. That is what it feels like. That is what it looks like. Every day presents something new to react to, something new to fix, something new to worry about. And without noticing, you start believing that all of this is happening to you, that you are a victim of circumstances, that peace is something external that you need to chase and somehow earn. But what if none of that is the real problem? What if the real problem is not what happens to you, but how you interpret what happens to you? This is where most people get trapped without even realizing it. They live on autopilot. A comment ruins their mood. A delay turns into frustration. A mistake becomes proof that they are not good enough. They react instantly, emotionally, impulsively, as if the world is constantly attacking them. And the worst part is that this feels normal. It feels justified. It feels real. But it is not. It is conditioning. It is habit. It is a way of thinking that was never questioned. Epictetus made this clear in Enchiridion chapter 5, when he said that people are not disturbed by things, but by the views they take of them. Think about that carefully. Not by things, but by the interpretation of those things. That means two people can go through the exact same situation and walk away with completely different emotions, completely different conclusions, completely different lives. So what does that tell you? It tells you that reality is not what controls you. Your perception of reality does. And once you truly understand that, something shifts. Suddenly, the things that used to shake you start to lose their power. The situations that once overwhelmed you begin to feel manageable. You start to see space between what happens and how you respond. And in that space, there is something most people never experience: freedom. But here is the uncomfortable truth. Most people do not want this kind of freedom because it comes with responsibility. It forces you to stop blaming everything outside of you. It forces you to look inward. It forces you to admit that maybe, just maybe, the way you have been thinking is the very thing holding you back. And that is not easy to accept. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, Book 2, Paragraph 1, that you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength, not comfort. Strength, because strength is what you need to face reality without distortion, without illusion, without the constant need for things to be different from what they are. In this video, you're about to see 10 Stoic ideas that will challenge the way you think at a fundamental level. Not surface-level motivation, not temporary inspiration, but principles that, if understood deeply, can reshape how you see problems, people, and even yourself. Some of these ideas will sound simple, almost too simple. You might even feel like you already know them. But knowing something is not the same as living it, and as you go deeper, you will start to notice the gap between what you think you understand and how you actually behave. That gap is where transformation happens. And as we move forward, the ideas will become more demanding, more confronting, more honest. Because real change is not comfortable. It requires you to let go of old patterns, old reactions, old beliefs that once felt like part of who you are. By the time you reach the end, you may realize that the way you have been seeing the world is only one version of reality, and that there is another way, a calmer way, a clearer way, a stronger way. But there is a catch. Once you see it, you cannot unsee it. And the question is no longer whether your life will change. The question becomes whether you are willing to change the way you think in order to change everything else. The first idea is simple, but it destroys one of the biggest illusions you live under every single day. You do not control what happens to you. You never did, and you never will. But you do control how you respond. At first, this sounds obvious, almost cliché. But if it were truly understood, your life would look very different right now. Because most of your stress comes from trying to control what was never yours to control in the first place. You want people to act a certain way. You want situations to unfold according to your expectations. You want outcomes to match the story you created in your head. And when reality refuses to cooperate, you suffer. Not because reality is wrong, but because your expectation was. Epictetus made this distinction brutally clear in Enchiridion chapter 1. Some things are within your control, and some things are not. That is the line that separates peace from chaos. And yet, most people spend their entire lives ignoring it. Look at your daily frustrations: traffic, delays, other people's opinions, unexpected problems. None of these are under your control, yet you react to them as if they should obey you, as if the world owes you alignment, as if things going wrong is some kind of personal offense. It is not. It is reality doing what reality does. And every time you resist that, every time you argue with what is already happening, you create unnecessary suffering. You are not just experiencing the situation. You are fighting it mentally. You are adding a second layer of pain that did not need to exist. Seneca wrote in Letters from a Stoic, letter 13, that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality. Think about how many times your mind has made something worse than it actually was. How many times you replayed a moment, exaggerated a problem, anticipated a negative outcome that never even happened. That is the cost of not understanding this idea. Now imagine the opposite. Imagine facing a problem and immediately asking yourself, is this within my control? If the answer is yes, you act, calmly, directly, without emotional chaos. If the answer is no, you let it go. Not out of weakness, but out of clarity. Because wasting energy on what you cannot change is the fastest way to lose control over what you actually can. This is where most people fail. Letting go feels like giving up. It feels passive. It feels like you are accepting less. But it is the opposite. You are not giving up control, you are reclaiming it. Because the moment you stop trying to control everything outside of you, you gain full control over what is inside of you. Your thoughts, your actions, your discipline, your focus. And that is where your real power has always been. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this constantly in Meditations, Book 8, paragraph 47. External things are not the problem, it is your judgment of them. And you can remove that judgment at any moment, That means peace is not something you wait for. It is something you choose again and again, every time reality does not match your expectations. But here is where it gets uncomfortable. Because understanding this idea forces you to take responsibility. You can no longer blame people for your reactions. You can no longer blame situations for your emotions. You can no longer say that life is the reason you feel the way you feel. Now it is on you. And most people are not ready for that. But if you are, everything starts to change. Slowly at first, then all at once. You begin to respond instead of react. You begin to observe instead of absorb. You begin to move through life with a level of calm that most people cannot understand. And that is only the beginning. Because once you realize what is under your control, the next question becomes even more important. What exactly is creating your emotions in the first place? You believe your emotions come from what happens to you, that something outside triggered what you feel, that a person made you angry, that a situation made you anxious, that a moment caused your frustration. But that is not what is really happening. Your emotions do not come from events. They come from your interpretation of those events. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths in Stoicism, because it takes away the illusion that your feelings are automatic and justified. It forces you to look deeper. It forces you to question the story your mind creates every time something happens. Epictetus said in Enchiridion chapter 5 that it is not things themselves that disturb us, but the opinions we have about them. That means there is always a hidden step between what happens and how you feel. And that step is your judgment. Someone ignores you. One person thinks, they must be busy. Another thinks, they do not respect me. Same situation, completely different emotion. One stays calm, the other feels rejected or angry. What changed? Not the event, the meaning attached to it. And that is where your power is. But here is the problem. Most of the time you are not aware of the meaning you are creating. It happens instantly, automatically. You do not question it. You accept it as truth. You assume your interpretation is reality. And from that moment your emotion feels justified, it feels real, it feels undeniable. But it is built on something that was never examined. Seneca wrote in On Anger, Book 2, that no emotion takes hold without the mind first giving its consent. That means before anger appears, there is a judgment. Before anxiety grows, there is an interpretation. Before frustration builds, There is a story being told inside your head, and you agreed with it without noticing. Think about how many times you have reacted strongly to something, only to later realize you misunderstood the situation, or that it was not as serious as it seemed, or that your mind exaggerated what actually happened. In those moments, you see it clearly. Your emotion was not caused by reality, it was caused by your perception of reality. Now imagine being able to see that in real time. Imagine something happening, and instead of reacting instantly, you pause. You observe the thought forming. You question it. You ask yourself, is this interpretation true, or is this just my mind trying to create a story? That single pause changes everything, because it creates distance between you and your reaction, and in that distance you gain control. Marcus Aurelius practiced this constantly. In Meditations, Book 4, Paragraph 3, he reminded himself to remove the judgment and the complaint disappears. Not suppressing the emotion, not ignoring it, removing the interpretation that gave birth to it. This is not about becoming cold or emotionless. It is about becoming aware. Because once you see that your emotions are shaped by your thoughts, you stop being a victim of them. You stop being dragged by every feeling that arises. You start to choose which thoughts deserve your attention and which ones do not. And that changes how you experience everything. But this leads to something even more subtle, even more hidden. Because if your emotions come from your interpretations, then there is another layer you need to confront. Why do you take everything so personally? You walk into a room and feel judged. Someone speaks in a certain tone and you assume disrespect. A message is shorter than usual and you start imagining distance. A look, a silence, a delay, and suddenly your mind builds an entire narrative around it. And at the center of that narrative, there is always the same assumption. It is about you. This is one of the most exhausting habits you carry without noticing. You take neutral events and turn them into personal attacks. You interpret behavior through the lens of your own insecurities, your own expectations, your own need for validation. And once that happens, your emotions follow immediately. You feel offended, disrespected, ignored, rejected. But what if none of that was actually true? What if most of what you take personally has nothing to do with you at all? Epictetus made this painfully clear when he taught that when someone acts in a certain way, they are acting according to what they believe is right. Not according to you, not to hurt you, not to disrespect you. According to their own perspective, their own limitations, their own internal world. That means people are not thinking about you as much as you think they are. They are thinking about themselves, their problems, their fears, their priorities, their distractions. And yet you keep inserting yourself into everything. You turn someone's bad day into a reflection of your worth. You turn someone's silence into rejection. You turn someone's behavior into a statement about you. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself of this constantly. In Meditations, Book 11, Paragraph 18, he wrote that when someone does wrong, it is because they do not know better, not because they are targeting you personally, not because you are at the center of their actions. This changes how you see people, because instead of reacting with ego, you start observing with clarity. You realize that most behavior is not intentional harm. It is ignorance, it is distraction. It is someone dealing with their own internal struggles in a way that spills over into their actions. And when you see that, something shifts. You stop reacting defensively. You stop needing to prove something. You stop carrying emotional weight that was never yours to carry. Seneca wrote on the firmness of the wise man, that the wise person is invulnerable not because nothing happens to them, but because they refuse to interpret everything as an attack. That is real strength, not controlling others, not avoiding discomfort, but refusing to let your peace depend on how others behave. Think about how much energy you lose every day by taking things personally. How many situations you replay in your head. How many conversations you overanalyze. How many meanings you create that were never actually there. All of that drains you, and all of that can stop. The moment you realize that not everything is about you, you gain a level of freedom that most people never experience. You start to move through the world with less tension, less defensiveness, less emotional noise. You begin to see people as they are, not as reflections of your fears. But this is only the surface. Because even if you stop taking things personally, there is still something deeper that keeps you trapped. something that keeps you reacting even when you understand all of this. Because knowing is not enough. And that is where most people fail. You understand the idea, you see the pattern, you even agree with it. But when the moment comes, you still react the same way. You get irritated, you lose patience, you say something you regret, you feel the emotion take over before you can stop it. And then you think, why does this keep happening if I already know better? Because knowing is not control. Most people believe that awareness is enough to change behavior, that once you understand something, you will naturally act differently. But that is not how the mind works. The mind follows patterns, not intentions. It repeats what has been practiced, not what has been understood. That means if you have spent years reacting impulsively, thinking differently for a few minutes, will not undo that. It requires something deeper. It requires discipline. Not discipline in the sense of forcing yourself to be rigid or suppressing what you feel, but discipline in how you respond. Discipline in creating a gap between impulse and action. Discipline in choosing your reaction instead of obeying it. Epictetus taught that no man is free who is not master of himself. And that mastery is not built in moments of calm. It is built in moments of pressure, when something triggers you, when something challenges you, when your old habits are ready to take control. That is the test. And most people fail it because they wait until the moment happens to try to control themselves. But by then the emotion is already strong, the reaction is already forming, the habit is already in motion. You do not prepare in the moment, you prepare before it. Marcus Aurelius trained his mind daily. In Meditations, Book 2, Paragraph 1, he reminded himself that he would meet people who are rude, selfish, and ignorant, not as a complaint, but as preparation. So, when it happened, it did not surprise him. It did not control him, he expected it, and because of that, he stayed in control. This is where discipline begins, not in reacting perfectly, but in anticipating reality as it is. People will disappoint you, things will go wrong, plans will fail. If you expect perfection, you will always be caught off guard. If you expect difficulty, you remain steady. But even with preparation, there is still a critical moment. The moment between stimulus and response. This is where your entire life is decided. Something happens, a word, a look, a problem, and in that instant, there is a small space, almost invisible, a fraction of a second, where you can either react automatically or choose consciously. Most people never notice that space. They skip it. They go straight from trigger to reaction. But if you train yourself to slow down even slightly, you start to see it. And once you see it, you can use it. Instead of reacting, you pause. Instead of speaking, you observe. Instead of following the emotion, you question it, and in that pause, you regain control. Seneca wrote in Letters from a Stoic, letter 85, that the greatest remedy for anger is delay, not suppression, not denial. Delay. Because time weakens the intensity of emotion and gives reason the chance to step in. This is not about being perfect. You will still fail sometimes. You will still react in ways you wish you had not. But every time you catch yourself, every time you pause instead of reacting, you are building something, control. And over time, that control becomes your default. You stop being someone who reacts to everything. You become someone who chooses. And that changes how people see you, how situations affect you, how you move through life. But this brings you to a deeper challenge, because even if you control your reactions, there is still something that creates tension inside you, something that makes you resist reality itself. And until you understand that, you will always feel like you are fighting against life. You resist what is happening, not always in obvious ways, but constantly, internally. You expect things to go according to your plans, your timing, your preferences, and when they do not, you feel tension, frustration, a subtle but persistent sense that reality is wrong. This resistance is so normal that you barely notice it. A delay feels like a problem. A setback feels like something unfair. A change of plans feels like something that should not have happened, and without realizing it, you begin arguing with reality in your own mind. You think, this should not be happening. You think, why now? You think, This is not how it was supposed to go. But reality does not care about your expectations. It unfolds the way it unfolds, indifferent to your preferences. And every time you resist that, you create unnecessary suffering. Not because of what happened, but because you refuse to accept that it happened. This is where Stoicism introduces a principle that most people struggle to accept. Acceptance is not weakness, it is alignment. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, Book 4, paragraph 49, that you should love what happens to you, because it is part of the whole. Not tolerate it, not endure it, love it, because it could not have happened any other way. That idea feels extreme at first. How can you love something that goes against what you wanted? But this is not about liking every situation. It is about removing resistance. It is about understanding that fighting reality does not change it. It only drains you. Think about how much energy you waste wishing things were different. Replaying situations, complaining internally, holding on to the idea that things should have gone another way. All of that changes nothing. It only keeps you stuck. Epictetus taught that you should not seek for things to happen as you wish, but wish for things to happen as they do happen, and your life will go smoothly. This is not passive thinking, it is strategic thinking. Because the moment you accept what is, you stop wasting energy on what cannot be changed and start focusing on what can. That is where your power is. Acceptance is not the end of action. It is the beginning of effective action. When you stop resisting reality, you see it clearly. And when you see it clearly, you can respond intelligently instead of emotionally. Seneca wrote in On Providence that what we call adversity is often part of a larger order that we do not fully understand. That does not mean everything is good. It means everything can be used. And that shift changes everything. Instead of asking, why is this happening to me? You start asking, what can I do with this? Instead of seeing obstacles as interruptions, you begin to see them as part of the path. You stop fighting life and start working with it. But this is where most people get it wrong. They think acceptance means doing nothing. That if you accept reality, you become passive, indifferent, detached from effort. That is not Stoicism. Acceptance is about clarity, not inaction. It removes emotional resistance so that your actions become more precise, more focused, more effective. Because when you are not emotionally overwhelmed, you think better, you decide better, you act better. And that creates a different kind of strength, a quiet strength, a stable strength, the kind that does not break when things go wrong, because it was never dependent on things going right. But even with this level of control, there is still something that can destabilize you, something that keeps you attached, even when you understand all of this. Your need for outcomes. You tell yourself you are in control. You manage your reactions. You accept reality. You think more clearly. But there is still something quietly controlling you from behind. Your attachment to outcomes. You want things to work. You want your effort to be rewarded. You want your plans to succeed. You want recognition, results, progress, certainty. And when those things do not happen the way you expected, something inside you tightens. Not because you failed, but because you were attached. This attachment is subtle. It hides behind ambition, behind goals, behind the desire to improve your life. And there is nothing wrong with wanting better. The problem begins when your emotional state depends on achieving it. Because then you are no longer acting freely. You are acting conditionally. You tell yourself, I will feel good when this works. I will be calm when things go right. I will be satisfied when I reach that point. And without noticing, you postpone your peace. You make your inner state dependent on external results. Epictetus warned about this in his teachings when he explained that if you attach yourself to what is not fully under your control, you will inevitably suffer. Because outcomes are never entirely yours. You can influence them, you can work toward them, but you cannot guarantee them. And yet you keep acting as if you can. You invest your energy, your focus, your expectations into something uncertain. And when reality does not deliver what you imagined, frustration appears. Not because the effort was wrong, but because your expectation was rigid. Seneca wrote in Letters from a Stoic, letter 95, that the wise person focuses on the effort, not the result. not because results do not matter, but because results are not reliable. They are influenced by variables you do not control: other people, timing, chance, circumstance. So what is left? Your action, your discipline, your intention. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, in Meditations, Book 6, paragraph 2, to do what is right and accept what follows. That is the entire principle. Act with clarity, with purpose, with integrity. Then let go of what happens next. That is where freedom begins. Because when you detach from outcomes, you remove the constant pressure of needing things to go a certain way. You stop measuring every action by its immediate result. You stop tying your worth to success or failure. You act because it is the right thing to do, not because it guarantees something in return. And this changes how you experience effort. You become more consistent because you are not discouraged by temporary setbacks. You become more focused because your attention is not divided between action and anxiety about results. You become more resilient because failure no longer feels like a personal loss. It becomes information. It becomes part of the process. Most people quit because they are emotionally attached to outcomes. When things do not go as expected, they lose motivation. They lose confidence. They lose direction. But when you remove that attachment, you become stable. You keep going, regardless of what happens. That is a different level of strength. But here is where the truth becomes even sharper. Because even if you let go of outcomes, even if you act with discipline and clarity, there is still something that can disturb you. Something deeper than failure. Your perception of hardship itself. You think the problem is the difficulty, the pressure, the obstacle, the unexpected situation that forces you out of your comfort zone. You look at hardship as something that interrupts your life, something that should not be there, something you need to get past as quickly as possible. But what if that is exactly where you are wrong? What if the obstacle is not in the way? What if the obstacle is the way? Most people spend their lives trying to avoid discomfort. They choose the easier path, the safer option, the immediate relief. And in doing so, they unknowingly weaken themselves, because every time you avoid difficulty, you avoid growth. Every time you escape pressure, you reduce your capacity to handle it in the future. And then, when life inevitably presents something hard, you feel overwhelmed, not because the situation is impossible, but because you are not prepared. Marcus Aurelius wrote in Meditations, Book 5, paragraph 20, that the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That is not just a philosophical idea. It is a shift in perception that changes how you approach every challenge you face. Instead of seeing difficulty as something negative, you start to see it as necessary, because without resistance there is no strength. Without pressure, there is no growth. Without obstacles, there is no progress. Think about it. The moments that shaped you the most were not the easy ones. They were the moments that forced you to adapt, to endure, to think differently, to become someone stronger than you were before. And yet when new challenges appear, your first instinct is still to resist them. You think, this is too much. This should not be happening. I just want things to be easier. But easier does not build anything. Seneca wrote in On Providence that difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body. That means hardship is not something to be feared, it is something to be used. It is the training ground for everything you claim to want. You say you want discipline. You say you want resilience. You say you want control. Those things are not developed in comfort, they are built in discomfort. They are forged in moments where you would rather not act, but you act anyway. That is the difference. Most people wait for motivation. They wait to feel ready. They wait for the moment to be right. But the Stoic approach is different. You act because it is necessary, not because it feels good. And over time, something changes. You stop fearing difficulty. You start expecting it. You start preparing for it. And eventually you start welcoming it, not because you enjoy suffering, but because you understand what it creates. It creates strength that cannot be taken from you. It creates stability that does not depend on circumstances. It creates a mindset that does not break under pressure, because it was built under pressure, and that gives you an advantage most people will never have. Because while they are trying to escape discomfort, you are using it. While they are complaining, you are adapting. While they are waiting, you are moving. But this leads to a deeper realization, because even if you embrace difficulty, even if you become stronger, there is still something that can quietly influence how you think and act, something that shapes your decisions more than you realize, your awareness of time. You live as if time is guaranteed, as if there will always be another chance, another day, another moment to fix what you postponed. You delay decisions, you delay action, you delay becoming the person you know you could be, not because you lack ability, but because you assume you have time. And that assumption quietly controls your life. You tell yourself, I will start later. I will take this seriously soon. I just need the right moment. But that moment rarely comes, not because you are incapable, but because you are operating under an illusion. The illusion that time is abundant, the illusion that life will wait for you to be ready. Marcus Aurelius confronted this directly in Meditations, Book 2, paragraph 11, when he reminded himself that you could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think, not as a threat, but as clarity. Because when you understand that your time is limited, your priorities change instantly. What once felt urgent becomes irrelevant. What once felt distant becomes immediate. You stop wasting time on things that do not matter. You stop engaging in pointless arguments, chasing unnecessary validation, holding on to distractions that add no value to your life. Because you begin to see the cost. Every moment you spend on what does not matter is a moment you do not get back. Seneca wrote in On the Shortness of Life that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. That is the real problem. Not lack of time, but misuse of time. You have enough time to become who you want to be, but not if you keep spending it unconsciously. Not if you keep acting as if you have more than you actually do. This realization is uncomfortable because it removes excuses. You can no longer say you will do it later. You can no longer justify an action with the idea that there is still time. You can no longer ignore the gap between who you are and who you could be. Now it is clear. Time is passing, whether you act or not. And once you truly feel that, something shifts. You begin to act with intention. You begin to choose your actions more carefully. You begin to eliminate what is unnecessary, not because someone told you to, but because you see the value of your time. You stop drifting. You start directing. And this does not make you anxious, it makes you focused, because you are no longer trying to do everything. You are trying to do what matters. That is the difference. You wake up with clarity. You move with purpose. You speak with intention. You act with awareness that each moment carries weight. And over time, this awareness builds a different kind of life. A life where you are present. A life where you are deliberate. A life where you are not constantly postponing what matters most. But this awareness brings you to a deeper question. If your time is limited, then what exactly are you living for? What is guiding your actions? What is shaping your decisions? Because without a clear direction, even a long life can feel empty. And that is where the next idea becomes essential. You move, you act, you decide, but if someone asked you why, would you have a clear answer? Most people do not. They wake up, follow routines, react to demands, chase goals that were never deeply questioned. They stay busy but not necessarily directed. They are moving but not necessarily going somewhere that matters. And that creates a silent emptiness. Because without purpose, effort feels scattered. Without direction, discipline feels forced. Without meaning, even success can feel hollow. You achieve something, and the satisfaction fades quickly. You reach a goal, and soon after, you feel the need to chase another one. Not because you are driven, but because you are searching for something that achievement alone cannot provide. Clarity. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself to act in accordance with nature, which meant living with reason, integrity, and purpose. In Meditations, Book 3, paragraph 16, he wrote that you should not act as if you will live 10,000 years. Death hangs over you. While you live, while it is in your power, be good. That word matters. Be good, not successful, not admired, not validated. Good. Because Stoicism does not measure life by external results. It measures life by the quality of your character and the intention behind your actions. That is what gives direction to everything you do. When you have that clarity, your decisions change. You stop asking, "What will I gain from this?" You start asking, "Is this aligned with who I want to be?" And that question simplifies everything, because purpose is not something distant or abstract. It is not a single goal waiting somewhere in the future. It is built moment by moment, through the way you think, the way you act, the way you respond to what is in front of you. Epictetus taught that your role in life is not to control the outcome, but to play your part well. That means showing up with integrity, with effort, with discipline, regardless of the situation. That is purpose in practice. It is not about finding something grand. It is about doing what is right, consistently, even when it is difficult, even when it is unnoticed, even when there is no immediate reward. And over time, that builds something solid. You stop feeling lost because your actions are guided by something internal. You stop chasing random goals because your direction is clear. You stop depending on external validation because your standard comes from within. Seneca wrote in Letters from a Stoic, letter 71, that if a person does not know to which port they are sailing, no wind is favorable. That is the danger of living without purpose. You can have opportunities, you can have resources, you can have potential, but without direction, none of it leads to fulfillment. You remain in motion, but without meaning. And once you see that, you cannot ignore it. Because now the question becomes unavoidable. Are your actions aligned with who you want to become? Or are you just reacting to life without direction? That question alone can change the course of your life. But there is one final idea that ties everything together. Because even if you think clearly, act with discipline, accept reality, and live with purpose, there is still one thing that can pull you back into distraction: the opinions of others. You say you want to think for yourself. You say you want to live with clarity, with purpose, with control, but without noticing, you are constantly adjusting your behavior based on what others might think. You filter what you say. You hesitate before acting. You question your decisions, not because they are wrong, but because they might not be accepted. And slowly, almost invisibly, your life becomes shaped by external opinions. Not by truth, not by reason, by perception. This is one of the most subtle forms of control. No one is forcing you. No one is directly telling you what to do, and yet you are not fully free, because you are seeking approval. You want to be seen a certain way. You want to avoid criticism. You want validation, recognition, acceptance, and there is nothing unusual about that. It is human. But if you are not careful, it becomes a trap, because the moment your peace depends on how others see you, you lose control over yourself. Epictetus warned about this when he said that if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid by others. That is the cost of independence. You cannot think clearly and still expect universal approval. You cannot act with integrity and still avoid all criticism. Because people will always have opinions, and those opinions are not based on you. They are based on their perspective, their experiences, their biases, their limitations. Just like you interpret the world through your own lens, they do the same, which means their judgment is not objective truth. It is interpretation. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in Meditations, Book 12, Paragraph 4, that the opinion of 10,000 people is of no value if none of them know anything about the subject. That is a powerful filter, because it forces you to question whose opinion you are valuing and why. Most of the time, you give weight to voices that have no real understanding of your life, your goals, your path, and then you let those voices influence your decisions. That is how you drift away from yourself. Seneca wrote in Letters from a Stoic, letter 29, that the greatest obstacle to living is expectation, which depends on tomorrow and wastes today. And part of that expectation is the expectation of approval. The idea that you need others to validate your choices before you can fully commit to them. But you do not. You need clarity. You need reason. You need alignment with your own values. And once you have that, the opinions of others lose their power. Not because they disappear, but because they no longer define you. You listen when it is useful. You ignore when it is noise. You remain stable regardless of praise or criticism. That is freedom. Because now you are not acting to impress. You are not acting to avoid judgment. You are acting because it is right, because it is aligned, because it is yours. And that creates a different kind of presence. You become less reactive, less dependent, less distracted. You move with quiet confidence, not needing constant reassurance, not needing external approval to continue. And most people will not understand that, because they are still caught in the same cycle, seeking validation, avoiding judgment, adjusting themselves to fit expectations that were never truly theirs. But you see it now. You see how your thoughts shape your emotions. You see how your reactions shape your experience. You see how your attachments, your resistance, your fears, and your need for approval have been influencing your life. And once you see that, everything becomes a choice. You can continue thinking the same way, or you can change it. Because the moment you take control of your thoughts, you take control of your life. And the question is simple. Now that you see it, what are you going to do with it?